How your fear of losing him is pushing him away. What's up, everyone? It's Sabrina Alexis from Anumo.com, and today we're going to talk about fear of loss and how this basically ruins your relationships and prevents you from getting the love you want. It happens to the best of us. It happened to me many times in my single life. You meet a guy, you really like him, things seem to be going well, and then all of a sudden you are gripped by the fear that you're going to lose him, that he's going to lose interest in you. When this happens, you might notice that the dynamic between you starts to shift. He may pull away a little bit, he may not seem as excited by you, and of course this just feeds into your panic. It makes you even more panic-stricken. You are desperate to figure out what you did wrong, how to get things back on track, how to get him to chase you again, to pursue you again, and what you can do to turn things around. And usually you just make the problem worse. But don't worry, I'm gonna tell you exactly how to keep that fear under control and what to do, so make sure you watch this video all the way until the end. Real quick, if you like this video and find it helpful, please tap that like button. It's such a quick, such an easy way to help me out, help me grow my channel. I'll give you a second to do that right now. And while you're in the clicking spirit, make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you get notified whenever I post new videos. Also, if you want to understand how to be that high value woman that easily, effortlessly attracts any man she wants and is able to have an amazing relationship, then check out our Make Him Want You Bad system. We cover everything you need to know to get that guy and make the relationship last. You can download it right now or when you're done with this video at makehimcraveyou.com. And if you have an individual question, you want one-on-one support, you can set something up and talk to me. We can do Zoom, we can do phone, I can respond via email. So you can set that up at anumo.com/coaching. All right, let's get into it. First, I want to give you a definition of fear of loss. Fear of loss is the feeling that if you lost the relationship, you would be losing more than the person. It would go beyond just not seeing him or speaking to him anymore. Losing him has big implications for you if you attach your feelings of self-worth onto the relationship and onto the way that he sees you. You fear losing him because you'll also lose a part of yourself. You'll lose a part of your self-worth, your self-esteem, because he was such a big component in that for you. Fear of loss is also the fear of not being good enough, not being okay. You feel like if you lose this guy, it will just feed into your feelings, your underlying feelings of unworthiness. And then it may feed into the feelings. Again, this could be, underlying subconscious beliefs you have about yourself that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy, that you're never gonna get the love you want. You feel like you won't ever be okay again. And that's why you have this, knee-jerk reflexive reaction to cling onto the relationship so tightly, because for you, there's so much at stake. And again, this is all subconscious. This is not necessarily something that you're thinking on the surface. On the surface, all you're thinking is, why didn't he text me back? Why haven't I seen him in a few days? What's going on? Is he losing interest? Like, those are all your surface level concerns, but they all are manifesting from a root source. And usually that source has to do with your feelings of self-worth and self-esteem. Now, I'm gonna give you an idea of how this plays out and what it looks like. And I'm gonna tell you the story of this guy that I dated named Kurt, who I talk about a lot. So I met him a few weeks before Fashion Week. This was back when I was trying to be a fashion editor. I was really young, I was really driven, I was really trying to make it. And Fashion Week is just a crazy, chaotic, insane time. Like, my days were like 16, 18 hours long. It was just nuts. So I met him, we sparked, whatever, we hung out a few times, and then it was Fashion Week, and I was so busy. I mean, running from one show to the next, and backstage, and interviewing this person. And while I was excited about this new relationship, it didn't, take any dominance over in my mind because I was so busy with other things. So he really needed to carve out a place. Like, if he was going to see me during that time, he really needed to work for it. And because of that, he was really pursuing me. He was really intrigued by me. He was really interested. And he was hooked. Then when Fashion Week ended, and I just want to say, Fashion Week is just more than a week. It's like a few weeks. It was a crazy time. So after that ended, I was like, okay, great. Like, now I have the space to focus on this relationship. And at that point, I didn't really have that much going on in my life aside from like my regular job, but I had a lot more open space. And when I had that open space, all of a sudden, I would notice how long it took him to text me back. I would really take it personally if he would cancel plans. Whereas before it was like, okay, cancel plans, whatever. I have 100 other plans going on. Like, I don't need you. So now I was just noticing everything. Because I had that open space, I started to daydream more. I started thinking about him all the time and wondering about all the possibilities and where this could go and what could happen. And as I was doing that, I noticed a shift that I'm sure you're familiar with. I noticed that he was pulling away a little bit. He didn't seem as excited by me. I was hearing from him less and less. He would still pop up on occasion, but our relationship wasn't progressing at all. If anything, it was going backwards. And of course, the more this happened, the more panicked I became and the more desperate I became. I was really just emitting this nervous energy, whereas before I had this cool, confident, like busy girl on the go energy. Anyway, then he disappeared for a full week. I didn't hear from him, not one peep. But then he popped up again and he was like, hey, like, how was Paris Fashion Week? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't go to Paris for Fashion Week. He's like, oh, I just assumed that you had flown to Paris. I'm like, no, I was done. I've been done with, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh, and I mean, I didn't get upset. I was just relieved that he was back. Whereas, like, think about it. A woman with high self-worth would be like, dude, even if I was in Paris, like, that's not the middle of the jungle. You know, they have cell service, they have Wi-Fi. You still could have gotten in touch with me. But instead, I wasn't from, like, the high value response would have been like, forget this guy, are you kidding me? Like, no. But I was not high value, I was low value. And I was like, oh, thank God he's back. Like, thank God I heard from him. It was like this big sigh of relief. Anyway, we hung out one or two more times, and at this point I had no power. He had all the power over me, had full control over me, and my fear of loss was out of control. And I was just kind of like going along for the ride. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to call him out on anything because I didn't want to rock the boat. I wanted to get things back on track. So I was being as amenable as possible. Then there was one night where I hadn't heard from him for a few days, and I was out with my friends, and it was, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and he texted me, hey, want to come over? And I was like, sure, yeah, of course, I would love to. Again, like, what girl with any self-respect drops her friends at girls' night, runs over to some guy's place who had been treating her like an afterthought for weeks now? But that's the place I was in. I was an afterthought. Anyway, I went over there, and that was the last time I ever saw him again. After that, I didn't hear from him at all until, and for those of you who have heard this story before, you know where this one's going, like 2 or 3 weeks had gone by, didn't hear a peep from him, and then he called me one day, and then his number popped up, and I was just relieved. Oh my gosh, I could still picture it to this day, that feeling of relief that just came over me. But he wasn't calling me. No, he called me by accident, thinking he was calling some other girl that he had been hooking up with or had started dating. And as soon as he realized his mistake, he hung up the phone, and I never heard from him again. Now, what was the point of me telling you this? I wanted to illustrate what fear of loss looks like. Now, I mean, we could debate this story. People have debated this story at length in articles that I've written about him, like, oh, he was just never that into you, whatever. If I could go back and do that relationship again, it wouldn't have looked like that, because I think that it was, yeah, okay, maybe he was never, like, he was only mildly interested in me, like, in the beginning, because he didn't really know me yet. But that is because he couldn't get to know me, because all I was throwing at him was insecurity and nervous energy. And that's just so repulsive that you don't want to get to know anything else. People will also say, oh, he's a narcissist. He sounds like a narcissist. And I just want to address this, because not everyone who treats you badly is a narcissist. Narcissists do exist, that's a thing, but sometimes people are just jerks. And I think that it's very easy for us to not take any responsibility for our actions and the way we show up in a relationship, because we could say, oh, he was just a narcissist. So if I had written it off like that after that relationship, like, oh, he's just a narcissist, that's why it happened, there's nothing wrong with me, then I wouldn't have grown from the experience. And that relationship, as short-lived and as fleeting and whatever it could have been, just a thing that happened to me, that was actually one of the most defining experiences in my life. Because after that relationship, I had actually had a male roommate at that point. And when it ended that day, when Kurt called me thinking he was calling some other girl, I sat down with my male roommate and some of his friends. I was so devastated, and they went through everything point by point and showed me what I did wrong. And if you've read our ebook, He's Not That Complicated, which you can get at understandhim.com, I'll also try to remember to link that down below. I recount the entire conversation with these guys in the first chapter, like everything that I was confused about and all the feedback that they gave me. And that was the day that I realized, wow, like, this is what the world needs. The world, the women of the world, and the gay men need to understand how men operate, like, from a male's perspective. Obviously, as a woman, I didn't have that perspective at the time, and that's why I teamed up with Eric, and here we are 12 years later with a new mode. But that was a defining experience for me, because it forced me to look at myself. It forced me to not just blame the guy, which is the easy thing to do. Okay, anyway, I feel like I'm getting off track here, because we're talking about fear of loss and how to stop being so scared of losing a guy. So there's that expression, like, we teach the world how to treat us. I don't know who said it, Dr. Phil, Oprah, who knows? And that's true, you know? So sometimes when you're treated badly in a relationship, it's just, we also have to take responsibility for ourselves. And the fear of loss mentality is that desperate, needy energy. Now, some people may counter with, well, why can't I just be myself? Why do I have to change myself? Yeah, be yourself, but be your best self. Why be your worst self? Yeah, our selves encompass a lot, but why lean into the worst of ourselves when we could be the best of ourselves? And this has nothing to do with playing games or catering our behavior in order to get a guy. This is just about having a happier life overall. So how do we fix this? How do we fix this fear of loss mentality? First, you have to get to the root of where the fear is coming from. And talk to yourself like a therapist if you don't have an actual therapist. Or even if you do have a therapist, you could do this on yourself anyway. Anytime you feel that fear bubbling up to the surface, ask yourself, what am I really afraid of here? And you might say, I'm afraid of losing him. Okay, why am I afraid of losing him? Because I really like him. And okay, you really like him, but what will happen if you lose him? Well, then I'll be really sad. Okay, and then what will happen? What else will happen? Well, then I won't feel good about myself. I'll be depressed. Okay, but then what will happen? Well, eventually I will pick myself back up and move on. So you have to see that even though it feels like this is the end of the world, it's not actually the end of the world. You actually will get over this and be okay. So there's no reason to have so much fear attached to this. Next, you have to fill yourself up. And if you're familiar with my content, maybe you're tired of hearing this, but you know what? It's so important. It's like, how many times can you hear that you need to drink more water? We all know it. Do we all do it? No. It's so important to fill yourself up. That means create a life for yourself that is busy, that is fun and fulfilling. When you do this, you don't have to play hard to get. You just are hard to get because you have a lot going on in your life. And that's interesting. The problem with me, with the Kurt thing, was that I just became so uninteresting. Once I didn't have anything else going on, or rather like I did have things going on in my life, I just chose not to focus on any of those things and to only focus on him. I was just not interesting. There's nothing interesting about somebody who's just obsessed with you and has nothing else going on in their lives. And if you dated a guy like this, you also would lose interest. So it's not just the way that guys are with girls. I mean, we're the same with guys. When you have a lot going on in your life, you'll just naturally stop putting so much pressure in the relationship. Next, try to just take it as it comes. Stop jumping so many steps ahead in your mind. Stop analyzing what everything means. I think that the overthinking is what ruins everything. So notice your thoughts. Catch yourself when you start to spin, when you start to spiral, and just take some deep breaths. Slow it down and just take it one step at a time. Again, the reason we do this is to protect ourselves. So another antidote for this is to just ask yourself those questions. What am I protecting myself from? Okay, I'm protecting myself from being hurt. Okay, so if I get hurt, then what will happen? Well, I'll be really sad. Okay, then what will happen? Eventually, I'll pick myself up and I'll move on. Try to just be present with him. If you're on a date with him, don't ask yourself, oh, is this the man I can marry someday? Is this gonna go somewhere? Is he serious about me? Just ask yourself, do I wanna go on another date with him? That's it. Simplify it. Also, keep your options open. This is so important. I know that feeling of dating a guy and just liking him so much and closing yourself off to other guys, but you just can't do that. I'm not saying you have to actually go out on dates with other people, but keep yourself mentally open to that possibility until he clearly and explicitly locks you down. You guys are official, you're exclusive, and that's it. Until then, you are still single. So act like it. Remember, you don't win someone over by bending over backward for them. This is how you set yourself up to be taken for granted and get your heart broken. You win someone over by having standards and boundaries and self-respect and sticking to them. You really just have to trust that things will work out the way they're meant to. All you have control over is yourself. You don't have control over how someone else feels about you. All you can do is bring your best to the table and then trust that everything will unfold the way that it's meant to. Just reminds me like with babies, I have 3 little kids. And sometimes like my baby takes forever to fall asleep. And I'm like, why is it taking so long? But really, I did my part. I created, all of his needs are taken care of. He's in a nice, cozy environment. It's dark. I, put him to bed at the right time. I set the stage. Now it's on him. It's the same thing here, basically. Like you cannot have control over everything. You just have to control yourself, work on yourself, and just trust that things will work out. I hope this was helpful. Please leave your comments in the comment section. I read them all. I love engaging and discussing with you. If you want to learn more about how to be that high value woman that I described in this video, then definitely check out our Make Him Want You Bad system. You can get it at makehimcraveyou.com, and I will include all the links below, and I will see you in the next video.